Hello and welcome to the Perth Gaming Crew show. My name is Jonathan and I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host Johnny. Johnny, how are you this morning?
Good to see you, John. I think it's fair to say today's ep looks like a job for the PGC crew.
I think so. We're going to be up and away today because we are very excited to bring you our Superman special. So the latest Superman flick by James Gunn has just recently released. We have both seen it. We've done, for those of you who followed us or those of you who haven't, we've done a Batman special before and a Ninja Turtle special, and now it's time for the Man of Steel himself to shine. So today's episode, we are going to cover some of our favorite characters. We're going to cover some of our favorite comic books. We're going to cover some of our favorite games. And of course, we're going to talk about the two latest Superman movies in modern era. Johnny, I think it's only appropriate that you kick us off because you are more of a super fan than me. And yeah, I think you've been preparing a couple of years for this episode. So
Yeah, I was as soon as I found out that there was a new Superman movie coming out, I was pretty keen for us to dig in to the super lore. So for the uninitiated, Superman is in fact the first ever superhero. Came first appearance was in Action Comics in I think 1938, even if you can believe that.
ooh.
And obviously was the start of a genre that's since just gone wild and crazy. Yeah, so Superman, I think, is one of my favorite superhero characters, and I like that Superman has quite an ensemble, a bit like Batman. So if you missed our Batman special from last year, have a look. But Superman similarly has like a kind of core group of allies, and he has a rogues gallery. So John, I might start with my favorite amongst my favorite character amongst the Superman allies, if you're happy.
We're ready.
So for me, it's all about Jimmy Olsen, who's the Daily Planet, the newspaper in this universe. It's their youthful news photographer. He's Superman and Clark Kent, Superman's alter ego for the uninitiated. He's Superman's loyal buddy, loyal friend, and he is kind of an amusing. He's sometimes like comic relief in different iterations. In other iterations, he's played a bit more straight, sometimes he's a bit nerdy, but then other times he's got this kind of quiet cool happening, and he's always got some very much out of his league lady after him, and they definitely went down that path for the new movie. We'll talk more about this later in the episode, but I love the way that James Gunn and particularly the actor Skylar Gisondo handled Jimmy in this iteration. But I've always thought Jimmy is he's like the heart of this Daily Planet news team and makes up that ensemble so well. But what about you, John? Like, I know your favorite character is Superman himself, or is it more Clark Kent?
No, it is. So, full disclosure, like I'm a big fan of like Batman, and I love the Ninja Turtles and Spider-Man, and Superman was up there, but not as big for me. So I had a bit of catching up to do. Certainly got into like the games and the recent movies. But I kind of saw you struggling to not say any more there, Johnny, about Jimmy, because he gets his due in the latest movie, and we have to talk more about that when we get to that, because you're right, he's done so well, and that was so interesting. But for me, it is Superman himself. Like, I often, with superhero, like Marvel, DC universes, I really like all the villains. I find them really interesting. And as much as I love Batman, for example, I find just that rogues gallery so interesting, and the draw card for me. But with Superman, Superman is my favorite character in this universe because I think there is something unique about him that has aged incredibly well, in the sense of he's like a creation of his time, when comics first sort of came out, and very clear, like primary colors and a really clear cut kind of look about him and story about him. But somehow, and you see this with the latest movie and Man of Steel and some previous iterations, that core part of his personality, you know, the good guy underneath, the one who's like putting himself on the line all the time to save everyone and everyone that he can, and he's just always fighting like for humanity, is just something I really like and admire. Like he's not falling, he's not, we see, I guess we see a lot of modern superheroes, they have maybe not more nuanced personalities, but they're personalities that go into like they're super geniuses, or you know, they struggle with the dark side. But Superman, yes, there are comic book arcs that go down those kind of tracks a little bit, but at his core, and particularly in some of the bigger and better comics and the movies, we see like him hold his own as like the good boy scout. And I like that. I like that. It's like you can rely on him. He's trustworthy. You know, despite the government shooting missiles at him 500 times, he's like, no, 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 I'm on your side, guys. Like, you know, and they come to accept him in different iterations depending on where you're at in the comic books and the movies. But no, and I think he's just great. And I remember, like, as a kid with Superman, I found him less interesting because I was like, oh, laser eyes, because I really love this, like, Cyclops from X-Men, you know, and freezing breath. But when you look at him at his own, and like you said, he's the origin there, Johnny, he's just done really well as a character. So, yeah, all for Superman. I think it's great that he's come back into the forefront with this James Gunn movie from this year. Very excited to talk more about him today. So,
Yeah, definitely. Something I will I just mention, I think what some people probably miss about the character, and why maybe some people don't find Superman to be such an interesting character, is he's considered like too OP. But if you actually read the comics, it's not actually the case. There are lots of things that can mess up Superman. It's not just kryptonite. Kryptonite is obviously the big one, and obviously kryptonite is funny in that it doesn't really have a consistent law. It kind of does whatever the writer at the time wants it to do, which is always kind of amusing. But it's also like in the comics, Superman's incredibly vulnerable to magical beings and things like that. So, and we'll get into the movie, but I think a movie addressed that issue with Superman really well. But we'll come to that shortly.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Superman Rogues Gallery? I actually think it's definitely not on par with, say, Batman's or even, say, Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery in the comic book world, but I think he does have a couple of interesting villains.
Yeah, agree. Absolutely. For me, like, it would definitely be Brainiac. So,
Good call.
yeah, I think he's quite interesting. And he's quite unique looking, and his powers are quite unique. And I like the more recent, well, the iterations of Brainiac that I've seen, where he's got his giant skull-type spaceship that hovers above Metropolis with its big tentacles, and then he's a reflection of that character, so he can take on Superman in different elements. I think he's quite interesting. I do like with the Rogues Gallery, some of the characters, like, you know, there's Fire and Ice, for example. Some of the names or some of the characters are a bit like, oh, okay, it's really early days of the comic book years, or a bit simplistic. But still, they're interesting. Like also like characters like Darkseid, for example, are quite interesting. And then I like what it's been done in the movies. So yeah, there's definitely an interesting Rogues Gallery to pick from. But it does feel to me like there's a bit of that inconsistency, like you said, like in terms of the lore, and some are just plucked. But what do you think, Johnny?
Yeah, like he's definitely got some like very kind of mid villains in his Rogues Gallery. I think that is a bit of a product of how long Superman has been around.
Yeah.
My probably favorite, like Lex Luthor, is the obvious one. Like he's the arch nemesis, so goes without saying. And there's so many different interpretations of Lex. But
Batman versus Superman movie.
Probably, yeah. Oh, yeah. Try to forget the Jesse Eisenberg.
Sorry, I was just coughing. Just had to cough. He made
some choices. Let's leave it at that. And he was directed in a certain way. I think it's not all on the actor. But for me, probably the most interesting, and I struggled to pick. I'd narrow it down. Brainiac was up there for me, but also was thinking about Metallo, who's like a cyborg who's got like a kryptonite heart, almost. But actually, I thought Bizarro Superman has to be the most kind of just out there and crazy villain, because he's like from a mirror universe to the Earth that Metropolis exists in, and in most interpretations of the character, like he speaks backwards and kind of, in some instances, it's like extremely intense in that way. Like he kind of does everything backwards, like everything in that universe is back to front.
Does your head in, doesn't it? Like,
It's
yeah.
kind of crazy, and it's just great, really imaginative character creation. And I have to give a quick shout out. I thought Tyler Hoechlin in the Superman and Lois series brought the character of Bizarro Superman to life really well. I watched that earlier in the year, the 4 seasons of it, and the Bizarro Superman was done in a really good way. He had this kind of like in the comics, he often gets represented as like almost like a Frankenstein Superman, or like a Frankenstein look. But in this series, they kind of had this. He's got like pale skin, and he's almost got like a jigsaw face. It's like really creepy.
Really disturbing,
Yeah,
unsettling
quite
kind of.
disturbing. It is literally the
Yeah.
opposite of Superman.
Yeah.
So I've always thought that's been yeah, so he's not always played as a hero, as a villain. He's a straight out villain. Sometimes he's sort of more like and certainly in Lois and Superman, he was played as more like a tragic hero.
Oh, I wonder if Bizarro might present himself in a future movie, Johnny. There's speculation
I
around
think they're building up to that. Yeah,
that.
we'll come to that shortly.
We will come to that. And look, people of Perth and beyond, what I will say, and I should have said earlier, is that we are doing a full spoiler episode. So if you haven't seen the movies, if you haven't read the comic books, heck, if you haven't finished the video games we're going to discuss, and you need to know if Superman wins at the end of the Superman beat 'em up game, or whatever comes up that we're going to discuss, turn off now, hold your horses, and return to us once you've played the games, read the comics, and watched the movie, because we are going in detail when we get there.
It's fair to say, John, that we let the new movie breathe a bit. We didn't come out with this episode right on the back of it coming out. We wanted to give it a couple of weeks so that people who really wanted to see it on a big screen had a chance before we talked about it.
Absolutely. And there is, when we discuss this episode, there's a lot to unpack with that movie, let alone the previous movies. So we're excited to get there. But before we do, let's go to games first. So Johnny, I think you're going to talk to us about the shining star, the greatest Superman game of all, and the one that created a legacy of wonderful, amazing, ever-present Superman games on every console generation to last thereafter. Talk to us about whatever in the land of Bizarro this game is, because I've heard of it. I read the reviews at the time, but you, my friend, you had the first-hand experience of witnessing this game in action.
Yeah, look, it's fair to say Superman does not have the best track record in general in terms of solo Superman games. To enjoy your Superman experience in games, you probably do, for the most part, have to rely on good ensemble DC, Justice League games, things like that, because his solo outings in video games are quite troubling. And
Bizarro.
Exhibit A, Superman for the N64, commonly known as Superman 64, is pretty rough. This I don't know.
I'm just getting angry watching what's going on, Johnny. Like, it looks
just
infuriating.
It's a hot mess. Look, you're you start the game, and obviously the object is to save the Lex Luthor's hidden away the Daily Planet news team, Lois and Jimmy, etc. And he's set this obstacle course of golden rings that Superman must navigate.
True to their comic books. Canon.
And this is a lot of, I kid you not, this is the majority of the game. Like you clear this initial rings stage, which is incredibly difficult to do because you're on a strict timer. If you miss more than 3, it's game over. You're back to the start. It's not kind to the player at all, and the controls are quite they're trying to describe the clunkiness of the control is just something else. Also you have to kind of comment on the fact that they're probably doing this to manage the the hardware limitations of the time, but
Mm.
there's this sort of thick fog around Metropolis by the looks of it, so there's no sort of background detail,
And you
which
clearly
is
get lost really easily, Johnny. Like,
uh,
you can't tell which way's up if you're in the sky. I'm just watching this video. I'm like, you wouldn't know where to go.
yeah. Look, this yeah, this could have easily appeared in our special a few weeks ago about garbage games.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, just really rough entry, and unfortunately, it hasn't gotten too much better in terms of solo Superman games. I think something
Mm.
has to be said about it's probably quite hard, especially back in the time in the 90s, to um, sort of adapt the character and the powers that Superman has into a game. Like that's
Mm.
when you've got a character like Batman, you can imagine like they're walking along the ground, they're grappling around, but the whole flight thing is
Mm.
probably just very hard to like. I mean, I imagine it's just very difficult to like code. Yeah, so but yeah, Superman 64 is kind of infamous
I,
in terms of how shockingly, probably one of the worst, easily one of the worst games of all time. Yeah, and that's not particularly controversial, I think.
No, I remember like I had an N64. I never played this game. I never rented it. But I do remember I just read all the Nintendo magazines back in the day. I love those things, and they all hammered it to bits. Said it was absolutely terrible. And looking into like the footage of this, I feel like vertigo just watching it. I'm like, why does Superman even have a health bar? Like you just kind of awkwardly sort of moving in between these rings. It just looks like a really
And that's
terribly made game.
not even the worst part of the game.
Oh no,
There's
that was the good bit.
if you could get past that, there's all these awkward levels where you're like carrying cars around, and there's like a bomb. You're trying to like stop a bomb going off in a dam, and you're like going around trying to like it's all just very awkward gameplay. Yeah, probably the less we say about this, the better.
Well, I mean, I think the people of Perth and beyond knew this or needed to know this. This is where we're going when we're talking about the games. And look, like Johnny said, it's interesting because you look at Superman in like pop culture. Superman is always kind of like an Optimus Prime where he rocks up and saves the day when the Justice League can't, or when like the local army can't. But like Johnny said, the same, like it's the other way around when it comes to good Superman games. And one Superman game, or should I say game with Superman included in it,
Yeah.
is a series that I absolutely love because I'm a huge Mortal Kombat fan and it's made by those developers, is the Injustice Gods Among Us games. So there are two of these. They're originally released on Xbox 360 and then the sequel on Xbox One and vice versa, like PS4. PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4? Yeah, PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4. Both really hold up. They are fighting games, and they do have like a whole like array of DC characters. So you see Batman, you see Lex Luthor, you see Cyborg, you see Aquaman. But it's really cool to see some quintessential Superman villains in there, like Darkseid, like Doomsday. Yeah, it's just like really great if you want to experience these characters, even like Black Canary, for example. You can access all these characters and it's a lot of fun. But what is Superman about these games, so to speak, is that the story centers around the conflict between Batman and Superman, and throughout the game you can play as both, and the storylines are both are interesting. And at the end of the game, you can pick like which one you align with, and it goes down their story path. So for those of you who are familiar more with the storyline of Superman, who becomes this all-encompassing god-like character, for example, who's like, I'm sick of this. Like I've tried to be the good guy for so long, and he's become like that total control, total power type Superman. It explores that with Superman and Batman at odds. Um, what I would say is, so I like fighting games. I know fighting games not for everyone, but if you want to experience just a good Superman experience in the video game world, it is really worth trying these games out because you can put it on a low difficulty and you can still have fun. Like the fights themselves feel like they would be comic book fights or movie fights. They're very epic. So you can pick Superman and he's got his freezing breath. He's got his laser eyes. He just flies up and he shoots laser eyes down. He's got like a move where you can grab your opponent and fly up in the sky and throw him on the ground. But what's particularly cool about these games is that they go epic in the scale, which you can see from the footage here. So you can punch like your enemy through like the sidewall, and they'll fly out a building in through the sky, and you roll and tumble, kind of like you expect in the comic books. And then, of course, every character, Superman included, has like a super move. So I think Superman's move was like he would literally grab his opponent, fly into the sky, out of Earth's orbit, into up to the moon, and just beat the hell out of them, and throw them down to the ground. And here you could see a little bit of one of his super moves there. So the sense of scale, and like if you're looking to feel like Superman in a video game, this is what I would say is the best experience for that. And the stories themselves are absolutely fantastic. So the second one, for example, introduces Supergirl, and one of the main villains is Brainiac. And I won't go into too much, but yeah, it has a lot of fun with what they do there. So, are you aware of these games, Johnny, at all?
I've played a little bit of the first one. I never got to the sequel. Would you, is the sequel superior to the original, or is it more of the
Yeah.
same kind of thing?
No, it's definitely superior, like because it's on that next generation of consoles, it looks
Yep,
markedly better. So if you could only pick one of the two, I'd pick the sequel. But the
nice.
roster is different for each game. So in the first game, you've got like Hawk Girl, Solomon Grundy. But in the second game, you've got like Gorilla Grodd, for example, and Brainiac. And I think Lex Luthor's in both. I think Catwoman's in both. But if you're a fan of the DC stuff and you're just like, I'm looking for a good Superman game or a DC Justice League-ish game, because the
Mm.
Justice League is a big presence here, I would highly recommend this game. Still, both are still very playable, but the second one, in terms of looking at, just like better frame rates, better graphics, better lighting effects, all of that kind of stuff. So that's Injustice: Gods Among Us, the first one and the second one. But Johnny, so those are like the kind of the more probably two commonly known games.
Mm.
We did want to mention a third one, which was kind of news to me because I was like, "Oh, Johnny, have you seen this before?" And he's, "Oh, I think I've heard of it." But I think we have to turn our minds back to the Sega Genesis era, because this is something I did not see on the shelves. This is something I did not know about. But apparently, there was a Death and Return of Superman beat 'em up game developed by Sunsoft, but also Blizzard. Can you believe it? Who did the Warcraft games, modern day StarCraft, the Lost Vikings, Blackthorn, all that stuff. So this was an absolute hidden gem. I only found out about this one recently, and this is, Johnny, the beat 'em up game that we all kind of wished and wanted for back in the day. So apparently this game follows the story arc for the Death and Return of Superman. There's a couple of boss fights in there, like War Worlder. Of course, Doomsday's in there. Apparently this game was kind of mid though. Like, have you heard much about this one, Johnny?
I used to see it in video game rental stores. I never picked it
Oh
up.
yeah,
Too many other games to play back in the, because this was available for both Super Nintendo and the
Sega Mega Drive.
Mega Drive.
Yeah.
I think they're both kind of roughly on par, both versions. They're pretty similar. But yeah, I never actually picked it up and tried it out. I have read about it I'm sure I read about it in gaming magazines, and I think what I've remembered just the other day was there, because I did have fairly decent Superman comic book collection. They were pushing this hard in adverts in the Superman comics. So yeah, it was on the back of the early '90s story run where Superman dies fighting Doomsday, and then he
He
initially people
returns.
think he's returned as four different Superman versions. There's like, and they appear in this game. There's like a cyborg version of Superman. He's kind of, it looks like he's got mechanic parts because of his injuries. So there's speculation that him in the comics that he's actually Superman back to life as a robot. There's like a Superboy, and he's like, his secret power, I think, is being having '90s attitude. He's the most '90s thing you can possibly have come up with. Superboy from the early '90s. Then you had Steel, he's just a guy in a metal suit with a big hammer.
Yeah.
and then the fourth one is called the Eradicator, and he's like he's kind of like an artificial. He's not a robot per se, but he's like a genetic creation from Krypton, and his role is to like protect like Kryptonian DNA. And so these characters appear in this game. I think if you were playing it back in the day and you'd never looked at the Reign of the Superman comic run from the 90s, you'd probably be very confused about who these people are. Yeah, and as in terms of the gameplay, I've never played this myself, but I understand it's single player only, and it's I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's not. If you're looking for a really good beat 'em up, probably this wouldn't be your first choice. Yeah.
No, exactly. And look, on that note, Johnny and I are looking to do a beat 'em up special later this year. Not too far away, that one. So we did want to mention this one. But yeah, from what I'd seen with this game is that, yeah, you have those four options of Superman, but it's single player, which is a bit of a, it's a big no-no in beat 'em ups to make a single player beat 'em up. But it also makes sense in the context of Superman without the Justice League and within that story arc,
It looks very much like an 80s. Like it came out in the mid 90s, but it looks very much like an 80s arcade beat 'em up. So that was kind of interesting. It's an interesting it's another example of Superman solo games. They're sort of mid at best, like they I don't know that I can't think of a really good one. Before we move on from games, John, I did want to just very quickly, I wanted to shout out a game I've been playing, and followers who've been following us, our channel on Instagram. I've been playing a lot of Justice League Cosmic Chaos.
Whoa!
I've just started playing this, so I didn't want to spend too much time on it, but it is actually a fairly good example of a Justice League ensemble game where Superman is one of the main characters. It's in the kind of chibi art style. I've only just started playing it, but it is a lot of fun, and it's got a lot of kind of quirky humor. So
is it a beat 'em up? Like, is it kind of like a beat 'em up top down,
not
or
quite?
is it?
It's more like an overhead view. How to describe it? Overhead view action adventure.
Yeah, gotcha.
So
Yeah,
it's and it's just like it's voice acted, so there's a little bit of voice acting, and there's it's got almost like that it's Teen Titans-esque humor in it. So it's a good one for young and old. So I didn't want to spend too much time on it because I've only just started playing it. But it hammers home for me that to get a really good video game Superman experience, you've got to have his mates Batman and Wonder Woman and co around him. Otherwise, it tends to just be a bit miserable.
Yeah, it is. It is. And like if you look at the history about Superman games, there's just not like a single player standout game like the modern Spider-Man games or the Batman Arkham games. There's just nothing like that. And those games, they've got so many in those series across the console generations, where Superman, like these games like the N64 game, probably killed Superman off for a while. And that Sega Mega Drive one is,
there can be a revival.
bring him back. There's a lot you can do these days. There's a lot of ways you can do that. I don't know. We were talking about Marvel Cosmic Invasion. Like, why not a DC or a Superman beat 'em up and use the flying elements, in a bit more of a sensible way? Yeah, so that is the list of games. It's interesting, that one you mentioned, Johnny. Yeah, and that, I think that's, again, just like I said, reflective of the lack of Superman in modern games at all, to be like, there's nothing else this generation or the previous generation that stands out. It's more the small spin-off stuff. But beyond the games, Superman really started with the comics, and I think with our comic book guru and Superman, what do we call you, the expert here, Johnny? I think you need to like share with the people of Perth and beyond your favorite Superman comic / graphic novel of all time.
Yeah, look, so many to pick from. The Death of Superman run in the early 90s was very cool, and it was kind of very ballsy that they would actually. I knew it was never going to be permanent, but that the fact that it actually was on the news in America that Superman had died. Like, that's how much of an impact it had at the time. It was at a time when DC was really shaking things up to sort of because because it probably over sort of the late 80s, it probably been overshadowed a bit by Marvel. And in the early 90s, it did some really interesting things, like it killed Superman, it broke Batman's back. There was lots of intense kind of stories coming out of DC in the early 90s. However, I think I wanted to just focus a little bit on All-Star Superman, which is a graphic novel, been around for a while, been around, I think it came out in the late 2000s or early 2010s. But it's like it's like a anthology almost. It's all, and on the description it's referred to as the 12 labors of Superman, and it follows a really interesting story where spoilers if you're looking to read it. Superman's exposed to too much sunlight in a scheme that's concocted by Lex Luthor, and
Classic.
this effectively gives Superman a kind of form of cancer where his cells just can't absorb the solar radiation, and he goes on quite this kind of epic series of kind of episodic adventures to sort of resolve that. This has actually been one of the main influences on James Gunn's Superman movie, along with the other main one is Superman for All Seasons, which is another great one. But for me, yeah, this has been something I've picked up and read recently, and I just found out last night because I was watching DVD extras on a different animated Superman film that there was a animated adaptation in like 2011. So I'm going to have to go and check that out. That sounds fascinating. Yeah, that's probably the standout graphic novel featuring Superman for me. John, what about you?
You got to tell us more about the story, Johnny. Show us
Oh
some
yeah,
panels. Are they all
yeah.
different writers, or is it a collection of writers and comics? Because I know
What?
some graphic novels they mesh them, but I'm not sure if it's a consistent one.
Look, that's the kind of I think you can see this in the James Gunn film, that there's just so much going on. That kind of really echoes All Star Superman for me. Like there's a story where I'm just going to try and find it, where Lois gets Superman's powers for a day, and that as a scene where they've both gone to the moon because Lois wouldn't normally be able to go to the moon with Superman because he's found a way to give her powers for the day. The Lex Luthor in this story is like really unhinged. So there's Clark. Superman goes as Clark Kent to the prison to interview Lex Luthor, and there's like a scene where there's like a massive prison riot, and there's there's all these different kind of weird and wonderful beings. It makes when you read this, it makes complete sense of why it must have. I can see how it would have appealed so much to James Gunn when if you reflect back on the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, like the content that he was and things that were able to inspire his Superman movie. You can see it on the pages of All-Star Superman. But each kind of chapter is kind of self-contained, like it's its own story, but it's building up to a bigger kind of climax.
So more like a collection, and then there's like a crescendo of like
that's right. So like for
comes out of that.
example, one of the stories in All-Star Superman is where he gets stuck in the Bizarro universe, and he has to work with the beings that inhabit that Bizarro universe, and like one of the things he has to do is to convince them to help him, he has to say it's almost like he's using reverse psychology. He's like saying to them things like, "Oh, it'd be really bad to help me, because then that would that would be," and that causes them to
Superman's got to play their game.
Yeah. So he it shows the wit of the character. Like he's not all brawn. He's actually Superman's actually quite a clever character. He's quite strategic when he needs to be, when he can't rely on his Kryptonian powers. He has other resources, and that comes out in All-Star Superman. Fantastic read. It's definitely worth picking up and checking out if you ever get a chance.
I haven't, so I definitely will, especially after seeing the James Gunn movie, because for me, there's a lot of gaps and a lot of, oh, who's that character and where does that fit in and
Yeah.
how I always like to see how things relate to or are inspired by the source material. I think that's the beauty of like when you have like a comic book or a book that's adapted to film, you go, oh, now I want to know more. And I go back and read that and go, oh, I see what you did there. It's not quite this, but it would have been a twist for fans, but something fresh as well. Yeah, my pick was the recommendation you gave me as like our Superman. Uh, you were our brainiac for Superman, should I say, Johnny? Look, this is fantastic. This is a really fantastic read. Superman, the death of Superman, and people of Perth and beyond. Can I just say, like we talked about spoilers, but you know what you're getting with this one. Let's not kid ourselves here. The final page is Superman in he's in the dying in the arms of Lois Lane, which is a really powerful image. Um, this was really interesting read for me because I hadn't read a Superman comic or graphic novel for a long, long time. I'd only sort of glanced at them as a kid, so it was nice to read through this and to be like, oh, the death of Superman, what does that mean for the universe and how is that played out? For those of you who are not familiar with the story, essentially a new character or new creature who gets called or referred to as Doomsday. He breaks out of some sort of containment. It's really strong imagery in the first couple of panels. I really like that. Like, really, there's just like really clear sense of like this determination and power of this creature escapes, kind of like a Frankenstein creature, and his goal is unknown, his purpose is unknown, but he's literally, if I could describe this graphic novel, it's a train wreck, like not of writing, but of like you're viewing a train wreck in action and you cannot stop it, and there's just casualties everywhere. So essentially, Doomsday is going from point A, where he's escaping, to point B, which is Metropolis, and he's destroying absolutely everything in his way. And well, that's kind of like the anchors for the story. It starts with Superman being interviewed and getting all these kind of hard, awkward questions about his relationship with Guy Gardner and these kind of things. You see the Justice League intervene early. They're on site and they're just no match for Doomsday. And I think something that's tricky to balance with comics like this, so this is from 1992, is the level of like violence and what is and what isn't shown. So the blood, for example, is black ink, but it's what it does very well is it shows you like how deadly Doomsday is as a villain. Like you see him kill people in addition to Superman. And the sense of power that's behind him and the impact, like the explosions or things being smashed through. Like there is a scene where Doomsday and Superman just crash through this skyscraper that's half built and absolutely demolish it, and then they get up and they keep going. It's just like this is your quintessential, in my opinion, what you would expect from like a really big world, like defining battle of these incredible super beings. And what's kind of interesting is I wasn't familiar with all of Doomsday's powers, and like just to show a few panels here, there's nothing particularly outstanding about what he does. Like he's a brawler, like punching, kicking, throwing, grabbing, all that stuff. But he's just super fast and he's so powerful that um, nothing can really stop him except Superman. And even then, it's questionable about how much he stops him and where the battle ends up in some ways. I really liked the scenes in this where there are multiple points where you think, oh, they're going to try something against Doomsday and it's going to work. So there's a point where all the Justice League combine their powers, like their laser eyes, and Bloodwind uses like his powers. All of them together absolutely don't touch Doomsday. And then there's a scene later on where I don't know what they are, but they're kind of like these kind of like super futuristic space guys who shoot lasers at Doomsday from wings. I don't know what's going on there, Johnny. I can't explain it.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in that book.
There's a lot going on. But it's good that it shows you who's throughout the whole comic, like who Superman is to all these people in some ways, and then he gets involved, and this fight just goes on, and it goes to the point that you just see their like clothes are getting torn off, and finally you see Superman damage Doomsday by breaking through like his bone, like the bony out joints that are sticking out of him.
Yeah,
it's an intense read, Johnny.
yeah, it is. It's an if you put yourself, imagine you were 10 or 11, and you thinking of like you're experiencing this for the first time. Superman Superman's no one beats Superman, right? And
Yeah.
you're watching this play out, and as you're reading panel from panel, gripped in the original books as I was, and it was intense because yeah, Superman doesn't survive the fight. He just barely takes down Doomsday, but it is full on. It was definitely at the time, and I think it's held up in that respect very well as a story. And I think it's wonderful how they introduced Doomsday. They didn't give an origin at the time. They did that late.
No.
They did it later. There are books that followed up later to give the origin of Doomsday, but at the time he just burst out of the ground and just started. He was just on a rampage.
Mm.
So yeah, it's an epic story. Lots of great characters. You got a bit of a teaser for the Guy Gardner Green Lantern before he appeared on
Yes.
the big screen when
Yeah.
you read that. So that must have been good.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent story and probably a kind of, I would suggest a good starting point because even though it does introduce all these characters to you, you can pick it up, get a hang of what's going on and going, okay, this is, it's simple enough but layered enough to go, I can enjoy this for what it is, but like, oh, okay, this is, yeah, it tells you a lot. I can imagine being a Superman fan reading all the way up to that point going, what, they're killing him. And then the aftermath of what that meant, like you said, that even being reported globally. So yeah, really, really good read there. So Johnny, I think we're going to have to go on to the big Superman movies. So we did say we're going to call out the two biggest, latest one. There are a lot, and we just can't cover everything. So, Johnny, I think it's important that you start with, the latest and greatest movie that everyone's gone out to see, which is really excited for everyone. So here we have. Hang on a minute. What are you doing?
Oh,
What's going on here?
Gus Gorman, looks the
This is not
most
what I saw at the cinemas.
exciting character in Superman
Who's
history.
this guy?
This
What's
is
going on there, Johnny?
We've accidentally played the footage of Superman 3, which is one of the very bizarre entries in the classic Superman films.
It's all pretty weird.
I have a bit of a soft spot for this movie, to be honest, so I don't actually mind that you've started with this, but there's some very strange things going on, and it's essentially it's a Richard Pryor comedy with a few Superman cameos. This flick, but John, take us. Let's fast forward a couple
I
of
feel like that was a
decades.
bizarro moment. I don't know
Yeah,
what
we
happened there.
dipped into
Something in the
the
system.
Bizarro universe.
Must have been the engineer, Johnny.
I wasn't
What's
ready.
going on?
I wasn't ready to see Gus Gorman on the big screen again.
No one was, Johnny.
So no, James Gunn's flick that's just come out in the last few weeks. I think it's set up. It's just launched. We get launched straight into it. Like you start at the beginning. We don't muck around with origin stories because I think the James Gunn is kind of expecting that most audiences will know something about Superman, so it doesn't spend time on that. You start.
There is like origin text though, isn't there? Like it's the way it starts is literally like it tells you what's happened, which is kind of interesting and a risky way to start a movie. I thought.
A couple of lines of text at the start to basically explain that Superman's recently arrived on the scene. It's something like 3 years ago or something. He announced himself as Superman. And it's something like 3 months ago. I could be butchering this, but 3 months ago.
No, you're right, though. There's that pattern, and then 3 minutes ago or 3 seconds ago, he's just been defeated for the first time or something like that.
He lost his first fight. So right off the bat, he's really cleverly addressed this whole thing about Superman's too OP, he's boring. No, he's actually gotten his ass kicked. And you find out why as you get into the film. But I love the tone that's set in this. It's colorful, it's optimistic. I love the dynamic, like the casting is excellent right across the board. And I love that David Corenswet and I think it's Kate Brosnahan who plays Lois Lane. I might be getting that wrong. I might be thinking of a previous Lois Lane. Rachel Brosnahan, sorry. They've got great chemistry. Rachel Brosnahan and David Corenswet have great chemistry, which is exactly what you need in a Superman flick. There's just they nail the whole Daily Planet team to a T, not just Jimmy, but the whole Daily Planet news team. It's very comic book accurate. If you read the Superman comics back in the day, this film is just full of cameos. It's even Christopher Reeve's son has a cameo as a reporter.
Oh, okay, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, John Cena gets a little cameo as his character
that was
Peacemaker.
weird. That was
Yeah,
weird. The
I thought
crossover there and the
that was
history of
fun
like
because
the
so that comes at a point in time. So fairly quickly into the movie, Lex and his team of metahumans. One you mentioned already, the engineer, who's like this being that's replaced her blood with nanites, like nanotechnology, and that's given her like control of machines and things like that. And then there's another character who's referred to in the start as the Hammer of Baravia, which is this fictional country that Superman has stopped an international conflict. I think it's in the opening crawl. It mentioned it's happened 3 months ago or something like that. He's later referred to as Ultraman. And so Lex and his team, they descend on Antarctica and they infiltrate the Fortress of Solitude. They cause mayhem. Superman, and you get introduced very early on to the Superman robots, who I love. But Lex and his team kind of hack the systems in Superman's fortress. They're able to retrieve information about Superman's origin, some of it that isn't even known to Superman himself, and then Lex basically kind of goes on a mass kind of effort to disparage Superman's credibility, and there's a message played from his Kryptonian parents saying, and there's like telling the world that Superman's actually kind of sent to conquer the Earth, and that's like, obviously, Superman Clark doesn't know any of this, so he's actually like, he's having a sort of crisis, identity crisis, because he's he's always understood that he was sent from Krypton to serve humanity. So this is a really kind of major point of crisis for the character. In the meantime, there's all sorts of, there's just so much going on in this movie, John. There's a kaiju fight in the middle of it.
There is.
You get introduced to this universe's version of the Justice League, who feature Guy Gardner's Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and a character called Mr. Terrific, who has like a mask which is the letter T, and he has all this kind of technology.
So on the nose.
Yeah, that's right. And they kind of they kind of serve a really interesting purpose, I think, because they highlight how much Superman cares about protecting life, because they're fighting this kaiju, and Superman's like, oh, we should try and deal with it humanely and get it to an intergalactic zoo where it can be studied.
and he's catching it so it doesn't fall, and he's not, and all this kind of stuff. And you're like,
he saves a squirrel. He saves a squirrel during the fight.
Too much, Johnny. He does. He does save a squirrel, but that works in that fight, doesn't it?
Terrific, and the other guys are like, no, I'll just throw some bombs into this thing's stomach and kill it off. It's like they kind of show like Superman is a step above the rest of us. Like, he's got so much heart. Oh, and I buried the lead. We start this movie with Krypto, the super dog, which is one of my favorite characters. And I think you treat it, it's a character in the movie in itself. And it's so satisfying. Like, you kind of discover why, at the end of the film, why Krypto is such a badly behaved dog. And you realize why at the end.
That's true.
So yeah, Superman kind of goes on this journey, and it's when he reconnects with his parents, Ma and Pa Kent. I came very close to selecting Pa Kent as my favorite character in the universe, because I think Pa Kent is sort of like gives Clark the kind of wisdom that he needs to realize that it's not what your parents set out expectations for you that make you who you are. You kind of determine that yourself. And he says it really beautifully because he got this kind of really down to earth kind of Kansas farmer, like really kind of
Very
like
much so. Very much so.
speaking slowly. There's like a really funny scene at the start where Martha Kent is like got the phone on speaker and she's like bent down, like speaking into the phone. It's like it reminds you of your parents. Like that's something my parents would have done. So I really enjoyed this, John. I just thought it was so much fun, and I really enjoyed the kind of climax where you discover that Lex has made a clone of Superman. That's how they access the Fortress of Solitude. And there's something really amusing about like Lex has like a team of nerds who are like
Yeah.
directing the clone. It's
And
like,
they're getting right into it, aren't they?
yeah, they're
Like
like they're kind of like esports kids.
yeah,
Uh,
they are.
uh, and there's a really satisfying moment where you know Superman's getting pummeled by Ultraman, his clone, and
Hmm.
and then you see a moment where he's just smirking because that all the whole while Lex is like talking at him in via like speakers because there's like little drones that fly around so these esports kids can see what's happened and choose the moves that or Lex is kind of directing them to use certain moves and stuff like that. And you see Superman smirking, and then he whistles, and Crypto comes in, and he says, "Get the toy!" And Crypto just comes in and
Hmm.
starts demolishing all the little cameras. Suddenly, the clone of Superman doesn't have his like he's not being directed around, and he's highly vulnerable. And yeah, that's how Superman gets his kind of comes back for the triumphant finish. Yeah, like I really struggled to summarize this movie because there's just so
No, I
much
think you
going on.
summarized it really well. Because there's a huge amount going on. Yeah, and go ahead, sorry, Johnny.
I was just gonna say, I was gonna like narrow it down to maybe my favorite element or sequence of the film, and for
Hmm.
me, I think it's um, there's a in the middle of the film, Superman actually he hands himself in like to the government
Hmm.
and effectively to Lex and his goons, and there's this beautiful conversation between him and Lois, and again it
Hmm.
centers on Crypto, and he's saying, "Oh, I'm going to hand myself in," and she's going like, "That's crazy. Why would you do that?" And he says like, it might be my only way to find Crypto. And she says,
Hmm.
it's just a dog. And he says, yeah, he's not even a very good dog, but he's probably
Hmm.
alone and scared. And that was just a
Yeah.
beautiful moment. It shows how much he really cares about life and like that he's actually willing to see kind of almost sacrifice himself. He comes very close to death because of this decision he makes, but there's a very satisfying payoff when he does. Um, he encounters Metamorpho, who's another really kind of deep cut DC character who can kind of shapeshift and not just into beings but into objects. And Lex has him there to simulate kryptonite because in this particular universe that James Gunn set up, there's no more kryptonite on planet Earth. So
Hmm.
Lex's workaround here is to get Metamorpho to create kryptonite just to keep Superman prisoner.
Hmm.
And there's the Metamorpho for I won't get into the specifics why, but has a change of heart and decides to help Superman escape. And he essentially creates a mini sun to re-energize Superman, and then Superman can escape, and then the movie can continue. But I know in just around this section, there's a scene that you really like, John. And I thought you might call it out.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll go into my broader thoughts in a minute too, but like there's this scene, like there's a point in time where I'm watching, like, what is even going on in this movie? Where like Superman is in like this black hole river, as I understand it, that looks like a bunch of pixels and voxels, and he's rescuing I mean, as we said, it's a spoiler movie. We've talked about a lot. He's rescuing
Metamorpho, or Element Man, as he's sometimes referred to. Yeah,
Metamorpho. He's rescuing
yeah,
Metamorpho's baby.
yeah,
And Metamorpho at this point in time is just a flying head for
yeah.
reasons, because he can change. I think he explodes his body using acid to like stop like Lex Luthor's goons, and then he's a flying head. So, and they're just like going into this like deep like black hole of nothingness, and then Superman uses like his cold breath to like reverse and fly their way out, and then they come out of this portal. And there was a moment I'm just like, what on the actual F is going on in this movie? There is a lot going on here. But it somehow manages to pull it off, like you said, Johnny. It's like it kind of like taps into those deep cuts. Yeah, like that was like a bit of a highlight, kind of like intense moment in the movie. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed this movie as well. Probably not to the extent that you did, because I've got a different experience of like Superman than you do. So a lot of things were new to me, and I think probably what James Gunn did really well is appealing to kind of new viewers or less informed viewers, and then the fans too, because to make that call where you have like Superman's Kryptonian parents be like, oh, actually, we want you to like find as many women as possible, and we want you to like dominate the world and be a god. And it's like, what? That's that's a tricky thing to pull off, but then also to pull in so many characters like Guy Gardner, Nathan Fillion was just hilarious to watch, really enjoyable. And then a character like Hawkgirl just sounds silly, in like the current state of things even, but they make her work really well with her attitude. And they don't just kill off some of these characters like for no reasons that they often do when there's a group of superheroes. Yeah, sorry, Johnny, go ahead.
There's great humor. I just love the humor through this film, and not just humor for its own sake, but humor that actually builds into the story. So you start very close to the beginning of the movie. This movie has an Eve test marker. If you remember the classic Superman movies, Miss Testmarker from Gene Hackman. So there's like a kind of influencer type character who's like taking selfies the whole time when all this crazy action's going on, and she's taking selfies of herself with all this crazy stuff going on in the background. But in a weird plot twist, she has a very big crush on Jimmy Olsen.
That was also like, what is going on here? I was like, is that canon, or is that? Oh, I see
no,
what they're doing with these characters now.
Yeah,
I'm like, what is going on?
Funnily enough, he has her as his contact in his phone. He has her saved in his phone as Mutant Toes, and there's a really funny exchange where she's asking about if her toes are unusual, and he says something like, "You have non-conventional toes." It's a great line, but anyway, the way this plays into the story is that Eve, she's been taking selfies, and like Lex's evil plans are like have been in the background of her selfies,
drawn really basically as well. It's like, here's a map of
it's like the
and
country, that Lex has
Belavia
helped.
and Jaharpur, something
Jahanpur.
like that.
The country, there's maps of Jahanpur where half of it is called Luthoria. Like, and Eva's sent Jimmy these like sexy selfies, but all the secret plans are in the background, and that's how the Daily Planet team managed to like take down Lex and kind of shift the public perception battle that's happening around Superman back against, and Lex obviously comes off in a very poor light as a result. And there's like a story as a subplot about Lex has been selling arms to the fictional country Boravia, but he's been like almost giving arms to this country for free, and the reason you find out is he's going to get half of the other country that they're going to take over. So it's very satisfying use of very comic book accurate Jimmy Olsen, where he has a babe kind of chasing after him. And there's a very funny scene where he's almost like negotiating with her, like she's if I tell you what Lex is up to, will we get to hang out? And he's like qualifying. So how long? And she said something like the whole weekend. And he's like, the whole weekend. It's like the Earth is
fate
in
of the
peril.
world's kind of like,
fate of the world's
he's
in
like,
peril.
oh,
And he's like,
can I even do that?
I don't know if I can hang out with Eve for the whole weekend. It's very funny. It's very silly. Like it's a very it's not. It's this movie doesn't take itself very seriously,
Mm.
but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I full disclosure, I've seen this twice at the cinema.
Oh, you did get
Um,
around to that second
I,
viewing. Yeah,
I
you
got it
kind
in
of
a
needed,
second
eh?
viewing because I saw it on the first day, and then I was like getting ready for today, and I wanted to remember all the key bits
Mm.
that were going on. I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to do that if I don't see it again. But I actually enjoyed it a second time more because I got
Mm.
to appreciate all those little details like the Cena cameo. You actually got to
Mm.
pay attention to what he was saying about Superman. He was saying stuff like, Superman's jealous of me because I'm more jacked than him and stuff like that. It was really, really ridiculous. Yeah, so
Fourth wall
stuff like
kind of.
that I got to appreciate more in the second viewing. So,
Mm.
yeah, no, it's top marks for me for the James Gunn first entry in the DC cinematic universe. Yeah,
Yeah, very interesting, and interesting to see what follows up from here. I did want to mention two other highlights for me with this movie. I did really like, so I quite like Mr. Terrific's character and what they did with
yeah,
him. He
he's
gets quite a
awesome.
lot of airtime, and I was not familiar with that character, but I was like, oh, he's got a major like role to play in this movie,
Yeah,
and his character is just so
yeah.
straightforward. He's like no emotion, and he's like
I'm
plugging up black
goddamn
hole.
Mr. Terrific. I don't need your
Yeah,
help.
and it's so good. He's like, I get in the ship. The ship will drive itself, of course. And it's like you could do that, like he's just like he's so interesting. Yeah, the way they did him, like, and they built him into the movie,
Yeah.
I thought was really clever. And then to my own surprise, when they picked Nicholas Hoult for Lex Luthor, I was like, oh, I don't know. Like he's already done the Beast in X-Men. I don't know if he's that level, but he changes his voice and then he does this kind of personality that fits the role. I was like, oh, he's actually working.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing more satisfying than that final end scene, Johnny, that involves Crypto and,
Yeah.
and Lex Luthor.
Nick Holt is very much he's doing a version of the all-star Superman Lex Luthor, really unhinged. Like you find out he's got an ex-girlfriend that's written a blog about him, so she's in the like
She's
prison
in the
in the pocket universe that
yeah,
he sends his like enemies to. Like so in his cell next to Superman is one of
which is full of
Lex's.
everyone. Like
Yeah,
what? There's
it's
like hundreds
packed.
and hundreds
So
of
many people
people.
who've slighted Lex are in this prison.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of them is like an ex-girlfriend who wrote a blog about him. It's just hilarious. Like, but I enjoyed Nick Holt's Lex Luthor. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'll get around to that second viewing too, because like you said, there's a lot you go, oh, now I kind of caught up with it because I found it a little overwhelming at the start going, there's just so much going on, so many plot threads, but masterful how James Gunn's pulled it off. Very intelligent movie and like pleasing long-term fans and new viewers alike. Yeah, top marks too. Well, the next movie we had to bring up was, and we won't go too long onto this because I know we've been on for a bit, people of Perth and beyond, but we do need to talk about Man of Steel, which was from 2013. Can you believe it, Johnny? Feels like a lifetime ago, but almost not when, where you're at our age watching that movie when it came out. This is an interesting movie because it came out after the kind of the Nolan trilogy had kicked off. It's produced by Christopher Nolan, directed by Zack Snyder, who's kind of got mixed views since with many of his other movies, particularly the sequel to this, which was the Batman versus Superman Dawn of Justice movie, which we're not going to talk about at length. No. We're going to speak people are perfectly on. You don't need to. That was so disappointing for so many reasons. But I did want to talk about Man of Steel because this is actually one of my preferred superhero movies overall. And in all honesty, so I went back and watched this week. I actually like this as much personally, and if not more than the James Gunn film, which is kind of, I know it's controversial. And I was looking at the Metacritic score, and it's at 55. And I know people are panning this film these days, but I know it was commercially quite successful. And there are other people who enjoyed it. I really like this movie for a lot of reasons because I like that it is an origin story. And I think one thing this film tries to do is go, all right, if Superman was real, what would that look like? And how would people respond to that? And how would Superman develop? So this movie starts with quite a bombastic opening where you've got Russell Crowe as his father. And Superman's mother's Lana's giving birth to Superman. So it's this big moment of like the first baby being born on Krypton. So you actually get a glimpse into Krypton pre everything you see Superman on Earth, which is great. And then you also see like the main antagonist, General Zod, come in, and his motivations are quite interesting. They're mixed. He's not just like a black and white villain, evil for the sake of evil. I know this. I did find like this movie is a little bit slow to start because it does spend time going back and forth with like Clark's childhood. Like it goes like shows moments where he's a teenager and he's getting bullied at school and he's got this great power, but he holds off. And his father, Kevin Costner, you can't go wrong there. He's got Russell Crowe and Kevin Costner as his dads. He's lucked out. And they're giving them this guiding wisdom of like, reaching to the human aspect where, you need to lead these people. And it's the opposite of what the big twist in the Gunn verse. It's the, they won't be able to hurt him. Russell Crowe says, like, how are they going to hurt him? He's a god, but he can show them a better path. And that's kind of what the vibe and the theme of this movie is throughout. I did think the acting was really good. I know people like Pan, Lois Lane, not so much, but what's his name? Henry Cavill. Yeah, they pan Cavill. I didn't think he was all that bad. I just don't think he needs to be an exhaustive, like overly expressive character. What did you think, Johnny?
I thought, Henry Cavill was great casting as Superman. I know. I think Amy Adams as Lois Lane was a bit didn't really hit as a really, well, not a real, probably I'd probably rank fairly low down the list in terms of Lois Lane's, and I don't think she and Henry Cavill had great chemistry, which does take away from the film a bit. What I'd say about Man of Steel is it has lots of great elements, and there's some really good sequences in it. But for me personally, I don't know that it weaves together as a cohesive story particularly well.
Interesting.
For me personally, I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's as bad as some people like to claim, and I think a lot of that is very much down to like BVS kind of coloured people's reflections of this afterwards. But at the time, I think particularly in light of this is right on the back of the Nolan Batman trilogy, and you could kind of see what they were trying to do. They were trying to give us what would Superman look like if it was a real world.
That.
And maybe they didn't quite execute it perfectly, but I can see what they were trying to do, and I do have a lot of elements that I really enjoy, like this interpretation of General Zod and his kind of crew of Krypton.
Yeah, his lieutenants. He's got like 3 or 4 soldiers with him. Yeah,
it's a really dynamic interpretation of the General Zod character. As much as I love the Terrence Stamp version from the 80s or the late 70s. So there's lots of great elements. It's still Superman DC content, so I like it. I enjoy it, but I feel like it's James, for me it's James Gunn's interpretation than Daylight, but I can see what they were trying to do with Man of Steel. So I can appreciate people enjoy it, and there shouldn't be, if you enjoy something, you should get to enjoy it and not really worry about what other people think about it. I think that's what I say.
Yeah, true. No, exactly that. And I think that's why I'm kind of like, I really enjoyed this movie, like especially coming back to it. I felt after coming off the James Gunn movie, for me, I was like, I quite like the moments with Martha. I think that's done. There's like the emotional messages it tries to convey hit home for me more. Well, I think because it taps into the childhood stuff is quite interesting. And the struggles where it shows like him in the classroom and he's like seeing X-ray vision and he's having panic attacks and all that stuff. And then I really like some of the scenes like where he takes on the world engine and it just shows like he's crushed beneath that, but the world's falling apart. It's really, everything is absolutely on the brink more than, it's just like the scale has gone like catastrophic, and he sort of raises his fist up and it's like he can do it, and he breaks through it and he triumphs through that. I think the moments for me like that were handled really well, and I quite liked the fight scenes with General Zod and his crew. It's interesting, and it's just a pity that the sequel won't go on to, but it was just an absolute disaster. So yeah, people of Perth and beyond. There are a couple. There's certainly plenty of good graphic novels and comics out there. There's some half decent games with Superman in them. Go see the latest James Gunn film, and hey, if you like Man of Steel, that's your thing too. Go for it. But Johnny, we've harped on for quite a long time about Superman. Is there any final thoughts about Superman before we wrap up our Superman special?
No, it's been great fun, John. I was just going to say to wrap up, if you're enjoying the podcast, please do like and share it, and follow us on the Instagram page. Over on the Instagram page, we often share a bit of what's coming next down the pipeline. So if you want to see a little bit of content in between podcasts, that's a great place to check out. But I've had so much fun talking about soups with you, John, today, and yeah, hope you've enjoyed it too.
That's been awesome. And look, just add to what Johnny mentioned, we try not to spoil too much what we've got coming up, but look, a couple of things we have mentioned before that are coming up. There is a new Mortal Kombat movie coming out. The trailer's out.
Yeah.
We're covering that in October. We do have a Castlevania special coming up later this year as well, which we're going to dig into. And we do have a beat 'em up special coming up, but we have more than that planned for the people of Perth and beyond. Stay with us. We really appreciate your support. Those of you who have subscribed recently, those of you who've been with us from the start. We are a small podcast, but we really appreciate your support, and we just love what we're doing. So that's all we have time for today. But have a great weekend, everybody. And that's the Perth Gaming Crew show over and out. See you later.